all the learning that I have done, and I've done a lot of learning. I've done a lot of learning. This is the most comprehensive book that I have found that really targets what we're doing, what for radically remissioning yourself. But the nuances are different, right? So how did I survive 4 cancers? I mean, a lot of it is in here, but there's nuances too, especially when it comes to nutrition and fasting, because the book kind of like glosses over it a little bit by saying, okay, there, you know, this person did this person did that, because there's a lot of ways that people are fighting cancer nutritionally. Some people are vegan, some people eat meat, you know, I mean, it's really varies. So we're going to talk about that in each chapter. It varies, right? So right now, I'm just going to say, if you're watching this and you want to be part of this class, then the opportunity, you can jump in at any time. It's all on the platform. Okay. It's not going to be on Zoom live or anything like that. It's just going to be on the platform. So the first step would be to get the Radical Remission book, and it's written by a woman named Dr. Kelly Turner. Dr. Kelly Turner, sorry. She's a graduate of Harvard, and then she did her PhD in at Berkeley. And so what she did was she went around the world interviewing people who had radically remission themselves from cancer. So she compiled all the evidence of people who had, because people like me, people who are radically remission, we're known as the outliers. So we don't actually get studied by our doctors because we're fluky cases that are like, oh, they're a weird case, and we can't really hang our hats on those weird cases. We can only, like, with the average, right? The statistically average people who probably, under the circumstances that most of us have been in, do not survive. So the average for me was death, right? And if you Google the average of what I was diagnosed with, was 3 to 6 months to live. And for many people, that was a prognosis that they had to deal with. And I'm not saying that you guys, who everybody's watching this, you're going to be in that situation, but it's really good to look at least what people are doing to survive, regardless of the diagnosis. Okay. So Kelly Taylor went around the world. She interviewed people who had survived dire circumstances. And it's not, now she's like, it's not just cancer. It's like many different diseases. And that's what Radical Hope is about. So that's the second book that she wrote. It's called Radical Hope. So if you finish this one and you really want to keep going with her studies and stuff, it's Radical Hope. Radical Hope also has elements of radical remission, so it's a little bit redundant at times, just an FYI. So I'm going to take you through what we're going to be talking about in the next couple months here. And if you can make the classes, great. I prefer if you can make the classes, because then you can ask questions and we can have a conversation. And I'm not just talking to myself. So I appreciate everyone who's here in the live right now. But if you're watching this on replay, then, you know, you're doing your best. I understand. So yeah. So Dr. Kelly Taylor. And just a little bit about me and my journey with radical remission. When I was, 2019, I was diagnosed with bilateral breast cancer, genetic, HER2 negative, then it turned to HER2 positive. I had a double mastectomy, reconstruction, had all the chemo that you can shake a tail feather at. And this was before I was doing fasting. So, you know, it was intense chemo. Now I do immunotherapy and I mitigate the effects by doing fasting. But anyway, then I had a brain tumor in 2021. And then in 2023, I had leptomeningeal diseases, when cancer gets in the folds of your brain. Because when they open up your body and they take out the tumor, cancer cells can still spread. I mean, that's the thing. That's why people get reoccurrences, because cancer is like a crab, especially the cancer that I have, which is super aggressive. So it crawled up to my head because chemotherapy the chemotherapy I had initially did not target the blood-brain barrier. So that's why it came up to my head and had a party in my cerebellum. And it grew to the size of an organic strawberry. And it was the original cancer in my breast. Breast cancer in the brain. It's a thing. And then they took out the tumor. And again, cancer cells love to party and they love to crawl. And you can try to shoot it with the targeted radiation. You know, you can try. It's called CyberKnife, or where they stick like little MRI sticks on you, and they can target the tumor. Okay. But they're still residual cancer cells. And again, cancer is like a crab. It'll go somewhere. And so it took a year, but it started partying in my brain, the cancer cells. And that's when they're like, oh shit, this is bad. And I was like, oh shit, it is bad. And that's when I did a 7-day fast. All right. So when did I start learning about this? I've been doing this the whole time. Right? I've been learning about this the whole time, but I really got serious when I got the leptomeningeal disease and was put on hospice. So I did the 67-day fast. I tried breaking in Dominican Republic. It didn't go well. And I was rushed back to Boston at the BI. And I was basically put on hospice. I said goodbye to my family, said goodbye to my children. And then the oncologist rolled the dice and started giving me the NR2. And my body was so primed for something at that point that it just sucked up the, I call it magic juice. I still have the magic juice once a month, and I fast for a week every time I have the magic juice. And so when they started giving me the magic juice, I started like coming back alive again. It took months. I had a nursemaid. I was in a wheelchair, then a walker, then a cane. So it was a gradual progression. You would look at me and never know. Like, people are like, what? You had cancer? I was like, mm-hmm. And then I was diagnosed with thyroid cancer. So I became a radical remission coach because I felt that this was the best thing to help me get better. So I was on Zooms becoming a coach while I was in basically bed. I couldn't move. I really couldn't do much. So I was like, well, I don't want my brain to atrophy. So I want to learn how to be a coach. So I did. I became a radical remission coach. So I'm very qualified to do this. And the thing is, like, being on this platform, it makes the whole experience way cheaper, because if you were to do a class, it can be like $200, $300, $400 for a class. So being on a platform, being all together makes it a cheaper experience for you guys. So now I'm going to go through radical remission. I'm going to go through the kind of subjects we're going to be learning about. Okay. And so we have about 5 more minutes before I open it up to questions from the people who are here. Yeah. And so it opens up to all the people who have ever heard the words, you have cancer, and their loved ones who have supported them on this journey, right? So the first part is introduction, whatever. We don't have to do that. Okay, so the first thing that we're going to talk about is radically changing your diet. And again, it's very nuanced. So I have a whole presentation about that, of different ways to radically change your diet. So that's number one. That is what people who radically remission themselves did. All right. Remember, it's the 10 factors. There was probably 20 factors, but she had to whittle it down to the top 10. And this is the top 10. So number one, radically changing your diet. All right. My diet consists of no flour, no sugar. That's it. No caffeine, no alcohol. And again, there's many different ways. There's some women, they still like their glass of wine. They still eat their little meat, but I think you have to find your way with it. We're not here to be in a purgatory, but there's one thing that cancer loves, and that's sugar. So if you can eliminate processed sugar, that's ideal. Fruit is fine, except when you're doing a fast. You do not want to have fruit because that will mitigate the effects of autophagy, which means cancer cell death, right? So we want cancer cell death when we're doing fasting. And ideally, you want to do fasting during chemotherapy and during immunotherapy, and at least once a month. From 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 days, or at least a week, perhaps. And that's what I do. I do a week of fasting. And if you want to learn more about fasting, that's something else I lead people through. So radically changing your diet. Again, very nuanced. We're not going to get into all of that right now. Number 2, taking control of your health. So being the CEO of your own health. So when they say do this, you question it. You question everything, right? When my oncologist called the hospice nurse or whatever, and then the hospice came, I was like pissed off at my oncologist. I was like, don't you do that. I was like, I'm not dead yet. I'm still very much alive, and I don't want that hospice energy. Like, I didn't want the hospice energy. So taking control of your health, being your CEO, I wanted to get off all drugs. And I did get off all drugs, except for the NR2, which is my magic juice that I take. But I wanted to get off all those steroids and all those pain meds. And I did. I was very conscious about getting off of those. But of course, I used them when I had to use them initially. But then when they didn't serve their purpose anymore, it just also made going to the bathroom extremely hard, being on all those kind of drugs. So I try to get off of those as soon as possible. Number 3, following your intuition. So that's where a lot of people struggle. They're like, well, I don't even know what my intuition is, and I don't know how to find it. So we're going to talk about how to find your intuition and how to channel it, how to get into it. Number 4, using herbs and supplements. Again, extremely nuanced. There are some people taking X supplements. There's another person taking X supplements. I went to India at the beginning of this year, last year, between Christmas and the New Year. I was at a Ayurvedic hospital getting healing, getting recovery. And, the supplements that they recommend are completely different than what my naturopath recommends. And so, everybody has their recommendations, and we're going to talk about that. But again, there are some standard ones that are really, really beneficial. We're going to talk about that. All right. Releasing suppressed emotions. Okay. This is important. Again, only 2 of the 10 are actually physical, and that's the changing your diet and using herbs and supplements. The rest are all mental, really. Taking control of your health, following your intuition, releasing suppressed emotions, because that's the thing, man. It's like, we don't just get cancer out of nowhere. Like, there is something. They say, look at your life 3 years before you got cancer. I don't know about you, but I had just lost my job. I had started a new company. I had kids 4 and 2 years old. I mean, when I had 2016, I had a newborn and a 3-year-old. Okay. So again, look at the soup in the pot. If the pot starts boiling 3 years before, that something was arising, right? And you could have had I had a lot of trauma with an aunt of mine. She's no longer with us. She passed away from cancer. And so, yeah, I had a lot of trauma there. Okay. Increasing positive emotions. So being positive, being grateful. These are things that we're going to learn about, how to cultivate more positivity in our life. And embracing, number 7, embracing social support. And what does that mean, to embrace social support? And then 8 is deepening your spiritual connection. So your spirituality, whatever that looks like, we're going to talk about how to cultivate that. And 9, having a reason for living. Oh my God, did I say 10? It's 9. Sorry, 9 key factors. I don't know why I said 10. Having a strong reason for living. So again, we're going to be going through that starting next week. but I just wanted to lay out the framework about what we're going to be discussing in this class. So I'm going to open it up because you guys are here to any questions regarding this. And yeah, I'd love to hear, Paige, do you have any questions, or Stephanie?
Yeah, I mean, I guess one of the questions I have is how much did you kind of coordinate with your medical oncologist from on the physical aspect? So like the diet, changing the diet and the supplements, because I feel like, at this point I get nervous to like I did try to start eating like a little more vegan during it was like during my second dose of AC, and I felt like extremely weak, and I was like, oh God, like this is I don't know if this is a good idea. And I feel like I've been like very encouraged by my team at Dana-Farber to like, run anything by them that even like herbal tea. So I guess I'm just wondering like how much you coordinated like as it relates to the supplements and the diet with your medical oncology team at Beth Israel.
Right. That's a great question, Paige. And I went into the experience not happy about doing chemo. I mean, really, they had to pull my teeth, my hair, whatever, to get me to go. And I was like, I am not going to do this unless I'm doing my things. And so I brought a big old bag to my oncologist, and I was like, I will do your chemo. You just have to look at this, and I'm willing to do this with my supplements and detoxing. When you're in chemo land, you need to detox, and there's certain supplements I needed to do for detox. And so I just said like, and I think there was one that she didn't know about, which was ashwagandha, but the majority, if you're taking control and you're educated about what you need, they don't have an opinion, because they can't have an opinion because you've done the research and you know that this is going to help you.
Yep.
So that's all. I never was questioned in a way, because I was always so confident, and I teach them now. I'm like, how can they let that food in the cancer ward? Are you serious? How can you?
Yeah, I saw your Instagram on the question with your oncologist, and I have not eaten any of the stuff in the. It's the same at Dana-Farber. It's like Rice Krispie. Yeah.
I don't. I don't. The doctors do the doctor thing, but they are not my nutritionists. I take my direction from my naturopath and from the years that I've been eating a certain way, which is no flour, no sugar, for now 21 years. And so, hold on, let me just hey, Peace, how you doing? Oh, we know. Yeah, so Peace, or we know, whatever you want me to call me to call you. I just went through what we're going to be talking about with Radical Remission, and now I just opened it up to a few questions, because it's only going to be from 8 to 8:30, and so I want to make it like very targeted. But I'm gonna go through this again next Thursday. So it's going to be Tuesday and Thursday. But please try to get the book Radical Remission if you haven't already. So regarding food, because one of our goddesses was asking about how to advocate for yourself regarding food, if your doctors are like, you have to clear everything, in front of us before you touch anything. And I've never subscribed to that. I've always taught them what we should be eating, because they don't learn this in medical school, right? And so my oncologist is just learning about fasting and the power of fasting, and they're learning about the why we don't eat sugar, right? You want to follow people like Thomas Siegfried, Jason Fung. These are all really, like, these are doctors who actually work in the field of mitigating cancerous effects through fasting and through not eating processed flour and sugar. And so the research is there, and your doctor may not be doing that. Yes, Steph?
Yeah. William Lee Dr. William Lee is another one to follow.
Yes, Dr. William Lee. Yeah.
And Jen Simmons.
Yeah, Jen Simmons. Yeah. Yeah.
But I'm going to tell you right now, if you try and talk to your oncologist about anything natural, most of them are going to shoot it down and tell you it's bad. I didn't tell my oncologist anything I did when I went to my integrative.
Yeah.
And I told her after the fact when I started doing better, and she was like, "What are you doing?"
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly.
They can't talk about it. They can't learn about it because it goes against the FDA. And if they do, then they can get fired as a doctor.
That's right. That's right. Yeah. So, Paige, I hope that sort of answered your question a little bit, that we're like renegades here.
Yeah.
We're not necessarily going to get approval, and we are not looking for it because we know what works. We know, I know it works. Kelly Turner knows what works. This is what works. And I want to one of my favorite, I want to share with you one of my favorite guys, and his name is hold on. His name is Pradeep Jamandas, and he has this video. I put it in the link. It's like one of the most clear about why fasting is so good. And I'll just play just a second of it so you can just see his energy, because he's got this like incredible energy. Okay. Okay. So if you can't hear it, I'm just going to put the link.
I don't know if it's just me.
Okay. Did anybody hear it? No? Okay. Well, I put the link.
Couldn't hear it.
Okay. I don't know. Sorry about that. But I put the link in the chat, and then if you're watching this on a replay, I'll put it down below. But he is like one of my favorite doctors who talks about the power of fasting, and that is really like the foundation of our nutrition. And then what Owino said, right? She said, "I've come to learn that we are ultimately responsible for our health. The doctors don't know us intimately as we know ourselves." And that is 100% true. That you, again, that is part of the Radical Remission, right? You become the CEO of your own health. Number 2 is taking control of your health. So that's why you're here, Paige, and I'm so grateful you're here. And the women, I don't know if you have met some of these women, but the women on tonight are women who are dedicated to learning, right? That's why they were rewarded. They came to retreat with me, and so they've learned all this stuff too. And they also work in the field, like Owino is a therapist, and then Stephanie is working in IV or a naturopathic with a naturopathic doctor. So yeah.
Yeah, no, it's this is all very eye-opening. And certainly overwhelming a little bit, like learning all of the information at first, trying to balance it. But
do you guys have any advice for that? Because I personally have never felt overwhelmed, but if any of you have, this would be a great time to sort of commiserate with Paige on that. I mean, Peace, this was all new to you, right?
I was very overwhelmed because I'm an actual nurse and I work in a hospital. But I have always tried to treat things naturally. So I didn't want to do chemo, but at the time I didn't know there was anything else. So I found my integrative and started doing high dose vitamin C by IV, ALA. I did hyperbaric red light therapy and mistletoe injections. And I still do those. And as of right now, there's no evidence of cancer. So
yeah,
That's
and
amazing.
Paige, I went to the oncologist last month to do my infusion, and they did my labs, and and she said that the labs were perfect. So whatever we're doing, the cocktail of these alternative treatments works, especially if you are doing Western medicine. I do believe that there is a happy place in between.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
yeah, exactly. Peace, do you want to talk and say anything? No? Okay. So I'm going to leave it there for tonight, and we're going to come back next on Thursday, and I'm just going to go into a little more detail about what we're going to do, and then remember, the first one is radically changing your diet. So I really want to set the stage for what that's going to look like, because again, very nuanced. Not everybody's diet's going to look the same. Paige, I meant to say that fasting is the best place to start. Yes. Yeah, Paige, especially if you are doing chemotherapy, it's going to mitigate the side effects. And Peace, I think Peace just started fasting when she came into this group. I think we taught her about fasting, right? Correct me if I'm wrong. What were we going to say? Oh yeah, she said yes, because we brought her onto the retreat, and then I was all like, "You got to fast," and she's done amazing with it, and she exercises while she fasts, which is really great too.
Yeah, I actually just had my last chemo yesterday.
Yeah.
So now I'm in the waiting for surgery phase.
Yeah. Now it's time to clean out all that stuff, Paige.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. And we can also meet one-on-one to talk more about that, the nuances of that.
Yeah, definitely.
All right. Well, I'll see you guys next Thursday. This Thursday. Thank you so much for getting on, and have a beautiful evening. I'll talk to you soon. Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Tonight we are going to continue with the introduction for Radical Remission. All right. So I started on Tuesday night talking about Radical Remission, and now I'm going to continue talking about Radical Remission. And basically the introduction, basically the writer introduces herself, and she also introduces why she decided to create this book. And her following book, she did another book in the similar vein called Radical Hope. But Dr. Kelly Turner was a student at Harvard, and she had already talked about in the intro about losing people at a very young age to cancer when she was just 3 years old to 5 years old, and then 3 years old to 8 years old, because it was a 5-year situation with her uncle. And then she also lost a friend when she was in school. I think when she was like around 13 or so. So she had a very visceral connection with cancer, and a very traumatic experience with cancer. So that really influenced her path. And then when she was done with school, she volunteered to work with people with cancer, and then ended up doing some social work in oncology. And so her path led her to this direction, because she said she wanted to learn about the outliers. Like, what is an outlier? What is a person who has, what does radical remission mean? Because in traditional medicine, the outliers are not celebrated. They're more pushed under the rug. And I can honestly say that as someone who's an outlier, who exceeds the expectations that were not necessarily researched or studied extensively. Why? Because it's extreme. It's extreme, and it's not the norm. And so doctors are uncomfortable with recommending what the extreme does with their patients who are on a certain kind of track. And so that is what led her in her direction, because she felt very compelled to want to learn more about the outliers, the ones who really have surpassed expectations, especially with longevity. And she was very influenced by Dr. Andrew Wild's book, Spontaneous Healing. So Dr. Andrew Wild, and Weil. And he is a very popular in the alternative healing groups and Instagrams and podcasts. And he's what you would call like a famous doctor for this. And so she was really influenced by his book, Spontaneous Healing. And I have some lines here from the introduction that I want to highlight. She was wondering why these spontaneous healings were not more publicized by the doctors, and she learned that in certain circumstances, the doctors had not wanted them to talk to the other patients, and doctors were, happy for them, but had no interest in hearing what they had done to get better. And I just shared about that. The doctors didn't want to give people false hope, essentially. And so that was like really the turning point for her, was that this needs to be studied. And it didn't make sense to her, if we're trying to win the war on cancer, doesn't it make sense to talk to those who had already won? And that's a quote on page 3. Wouldn't it make sense to talk to those who already won? And then she gave an example of Alexander Fleming, who was a scientist who discovered penicillin sort of by accident. And then she talked about, again, her story about dealing with her uncle who was diagnosed with leukemia at age 3. And then she again, after college, she went into helping cancer patients and volunteering, and even like playing with kids who had cancer. And this is what led her on this path, becoming the researcher that she is now. And she has traveled all around the world interviewing people who have radically remission themselves. And she wanted to sort of be clear about like, what is radical remission? And it's, in order to understand what radical remission is, it is helpful first to think about what is considered standard or non-radical remission, right? So what is radical and what's non-radical, right? And in conventional medicine, non-radical would be chemotherapy, radiation, and conventional treatments. And so radical could mean something that they're doing beyond the conventional treatments. And so she defines radical remission as any cancer remission that is statistically unexpected. And those statistics vary depending on the cancer type, stage, and medical treatment received. Quote, to be more specific, radical remission occurs when, okay, so this is how she defined radical remission. Okay, number 1, a person's cancer goes away without using any conventional medicine, okay? So that's not me, because I have used conventional medicine, especially right now I'm on immunotherapy. Okay, number 2, a cancer patient tries conventional medicine but the cancer does not go into remission. So he or she switches to alternative methods of healing, which do lead to remission. Okay? So first they try conventional, and that didn't work. So they try alternative. I can say that that is my case because for my first brain tumor in 2021, after my bilateral breast cancer, I was diagnosed in 2023 with leptomeningeal disease. So I was following the track. I was still doing all the radiation and the chemotherapy and all that sort of stuff. However, after the leptomeningeal disease is when cancer takes over the folds of your brain, they really didn't have a good solution for me. So at that point, that's when I sought alternative treatment. I connected with my naturopath, and she told me what to do, which was essentially fasting. And so I did do part of that, right? I switched over. And then number 3, and this is really adequately describes me and perhaps you, why do I keep doing that? A cancer patient uses conventional medicine and alternative healing methods at the same time in order to outlive a statistically dire prognosis, i.e. any cancer with less than 25% chance of the 5-year survival. And that is me. They give me, according to Dr. Google, 3 to 6 months to live with leptomeningeal disease. So that is the area that I qualify. I want to be on her podcast. However, I can't because I haven't been cancer-free for 5 years. Oh, Lord. Okay. And then she asked oncologists many places, do you know somebody who has experienced a case of radical remission? And so far, each one of these oncologists has answered yes. So radical remission is not, it's almost not, it's like not uncommon, but it's never talked about, right? Of course it's uncommon, of course, but in the grand scheme of things, it can be common too if you actually focus on it a little bit. And so she spent 10 months tracking down and interviewing alternative cancer healers in the jungles, mountains, and cities of 10 different countries, including US, Hawaii, China, Japan, New Zealand, Thailand, India, England, Zambia, Zimbabwe, and Brazil. So she really has pan-cultural aspects of alternative healing and radical remission. So that's what we're going to be talking about in the book. And then she also met with a lot of interesting healers. And what she gathered was 75 factors. But then from there, she whittled those 75 factors down to 9 key factors, because some of these factors are really very nuanced. Like, for instance, she was talking about like people taking shark cartilage supplements, but that again it's a very nuanced. But she found 9 that are predominant, right, in those 75. And that is what she wrote the book about. So again, that's the first one, radically changing your diet. We're going to be talking about that next week. 2, taking control of your health. 3, following your intuition. 4, using herbs and supplements. 5, releasing suppressed emotions. 6, increasing positive emotions. 7, embracing social support. 8, deepening your spiritual connection. And 9, having a strong reason for living. So that is the 9 factors that we're going to target in the following classes. And every, Tuesday and Thursday, we're going to be talking about those specific subjects. And so I highly encourage you to get the book to follow along with us right here. And you know, her hope is that I hope this book will motivate people to continue searching for additional ways to optimize their health, whether they are looking to prevent cancer or in the midst of receiving conventional treatment, or looking for other options because that treatment has done all it can. So she wants this to be a way for the cancer patient or somebody who wants to just prevent cancer to really embrace a different form beyond the conventional treatment. And I firmly believe that if we put intense effort into studying these cases instead of just ignoring them because we cannot explain them, then two possible outcomes will occur. At the very least, we learn something about the body's ability to heal itself, which is really true. And at the very most, we will find a cure for cancer. And I am convinced that I have been grateful to be the recipient of this cure for cancer. And I will be talking about that, especially in the first chapter, which is about nutrition. Because again, that's where it all begins, nutrition. And so I have been studying this, I have been doing it, and I have been also connecting with other doctors who study the metabolic approach to cancer, which I do believe is the reason why I'm still here. One of the reasons, one of the 9 factors of the reasons why I'm still here. So I'm going to be talking about that next week. And if you're listening to this on Substack or recording, the date of that live talk will be, here we go. What day will it be? It'll be Tuesday, but let me tell you the exact date. Tuesday, the 27th, okay? And then we're also doing it Thursday, the 29th. So if you're listening to this on replay, fabulous. And if you'd like to come to it live, that's also an option. So thank you for listening. And if you're listening through Substack, please subscribe at The Cancer Goddess, because then you get all sorts of great information that is not going to be available for free. So thank you for listening and have a beautiful, beautiful rest of your day.